Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started.
Godzilla is registered as a citizen in Japan. The famous monster was named an honorary citizen of the Shinjuku district in Tokyo as part of a tourism campaign, and was also designated as a cultural ambassador to promote Japanese cinema and culture. A Lego brick is capable of supporting up to 952 pounds of pressure before breaking. The strength comes from the shape of its internal tubes and the ABS plastic it is made from, designed to be extremely durable and maintain its shape even under great weight. Lava can flow as fast as the sprint of a greyhound. Although many lava flows move slowly, some very hot and fluid flows on steep slopes can reach surprising speeds, moving fast enough to outrun a person who is running. A body left exposed in a tropical climate can decompose very quickly. Heat, humidity, and insect activity greatly accelerate the natural decomposition process, so in some cases, the remains can be reduced mainly to a skeleton within a few weeks. A piece of pure gold the size of a matchbox can be flattened into a thin sheet the size of a tennis court. There are more Barbie dolls in Italy than Canadians in Canada. The popularity of the doll in that European country is so high that there are estimated to be tens of millions in circulation, exceeding the total population of Canada. The state of Florida in the United States is larger than England. Florida has an area of approximately 65,636 square miles, while England is slightly smaller, although its population is much larger. Ancient Egyptians slept on pillows made of stone. In reality, they were rigid headrests that kept the neck elevated while sleeping, which helped protect hairstyles and also prevented insects or sand from getting into the face during the night. Your brain is receiving about 100,000 pieces of information at every moment from your eyes, nose, ears, skin, and receptors inside your body. Most of this information is processed unconsciously so that you can react, maintain balance, and understand what is happening around you. Starfish do not have brains. Instead of a central brain, they have a distributed nervous system that extends through their arms and allows them to coordinate movements and respond to stimuli in their environment. Women in Tajikistan consider unibrows a symbol of beauty. Women who are not blessed with connected eyebrows draw them in with makeup. In some regions, people even use plant-based dyes to draw a continuous line between both eyebrows. In Australia, there is a golf course with sharks in the water hazards. Classic Australia. The course is located near the sea, and during floods, some sharks have been trapped in the ponds, where they sometimes remain for long periods. There is a tribe in Zimbabwe where people have only 2 toes on each foot. It is believed that this helps them climb trees. The condition continues because they are not allowed to marry someone outside their group. When Usain Bolt broke the 100-meter record in 2008, he did it with one shoelace untied. Even so, he stopped the clock at 9.69 seconds during the Beijing Olympic Games. A tiger's tongue is so rough that it can lick someone's skin down to the bone. This is due to small rigid structures called papillae that help the animal scrape meat from bones when it feeds. When he was 52 years old, the Rolling Stones bassist Bill Wyman married his 18-year-old girlfriend, Mandy Smith, but they divorced 1 year later. Then Bill's son Stephen, who was 30, married Mandy's mother, who was 46. If Bill and Mandy had still been married at that moment, Bill's son would have become his own grandfather. The first weather map published in the newspaper The Times in 1875 indicated the weather from the previous day. At that time, meteorological observations arrived by telegraph from different regions, so the newspaper published the compiled data after the events had already occurred. When Judy Garland was filming the movie The Wizard of Oz, her diet included 80 cigarettes a day. She was only 16 years old. At that time, studios strictly controlled the weight of young actors and often imposed very restrictive diets accompanied by stimulants and cigarettes. In 1954, archaeologists who were excavating an 8th century Viking settlement found a statue of Buddha made in India. The discovery suggests that trade networks at the time were much more extensive than previously believed, indirectly connecting Scandinavia with routes that reached as far as Asia. Bees always know where the sun is, even if it is night and the sun is on the other side of the world. They can orient themselves using patterns of polarized light in the sky and a type of internal clock that helps them maintain their direction during flight. The Rubik's Cube with the most layers is 22 by 22. All of human history would not be enough time for you to solve it. As more layers are added, the number of possible combinations increases astronomically, making the puzzle extremely complex even for experts. Octopuses, when extremely hungry, can eat their own tentacles. This behavior has been observed in conditions of extreme stress or lack of food, although in nature, they normally prefer hunting crustaceans, fish, and other small marine animals. An animal the size of an elephant can evolve into an animal the size of a sheep in 100,000 generations, but an animal the size of a sheep would take 1.6 million generations to evolve into an animal the size of an elephant. J.K. Rowling can go to Universal Studios whenever she wants and order them to change something in the Harry Potter attractions if it is not faithful to the books, or even if she simply does not like it. As the creator of the world of the saga, she maintains a high level of supervision over how her stories and characters are represented. If our skin did not secrete natural antibacterial substances, we would be completely covered in mold. Sweat and other secretions contain compounds that help control bacteria and fungi, forming a natural barrier that protects the body against many microorganisms. More than 10,000 seashells had to be crushed to make the purple dye for a single Roman toga. This pigment, known as Tyrian purple, was so expensive that only emperors and members of the elite could wear garments dyed with that color. Scientists created cats that glow in the dark by inserting a protein from a species of jellyfish that has bioluminescence. The experiment was conducted to study diseases such as feline immunodeficiency virus, since the glow allows researchers to observe how certain genes are expressed inside the body. Starbucks spends more money on insurance for its employees than on buying coffee. The company has been known for offering health benefits to many of its workers in the United States, which represents a significant part of its operating expenses. The first act of violence of the French Revolution took place in a luxury tapestry factory. The place was the Réveillon Manufactory in Paris, where a workers' protest in 1789 ended in riots and destruction, foreshadowing the social climate that soon led to the storming of the Bastille. Tom Cruise vandalized the tallest skyscraper in the world, the Burj Khalifa, while filming scenes for Mission Impossible 4. He climbed to the top of the building without protective equipment and scratched the name of his now ex-wife, Katie Holmes. During World War II, the Japanese invaded Alaska. Because of this attack, more United States citizens died than in the famous attack on Pearl Harbor. The THX sound is perceived as louder than it actually is because it has a very wide frequency spectrum. By covering tones from deep bass to very high frequencies, it stimulates different parts of the ear at the same time and produces a sensation of greater sound power. Aphids can give birth to other aphids that are already pregnant with more aphids. This phenomenon occurs because many species reproduce through parthenogenesis, allowing several generations to develop at the same time within a single individual. In 2010, a man accidentally burned the winning lottery ticket worth $48 million, which turned it completely black. Forensic tests had to be performed so that the winner could claim the prize. If you could scream or produce a sound of 1,100 decibels, you could create a black hole that would destroy the galaxy we are in. This is only a theoretical curiosity based on calculations of extreme energy, since no real sound can even come close to a fraction of that intensity. It is said that a fresh blueberry should bounce 7 times if it falls to the floor to be considered in perfect condition to eat. Producers use this test because firm berries bounce better, while soft or damaged ones barely bounce. Rainbows are actually circular, but we do not see them completely because the planet's horizon blocks part of them. That means there is no end of the rainbow, and there is no pot full of gold there. So do not waste your time looking for it. From airplanes or high mountains, it is sometimes possible to observe almost the entire circle. Only 0.0000035 ounces of pufferfish poison are needed to kill a human. However, it is still served as a dish in many restaurants. The chef must be an expert to remove the poisonous parts and leave only what will not kill you. All the Harry Potter books together contain a total of 1,090,739 words, which were turned into 19 hours, 39 minutes of movies. Helium in liquid form has no viscosity, so it can flow through microscopic holes. For example, it can pass through walls and floors using only the force of gravity. In 2011, they found graffiti in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, that said something against Kim Jong-il, the supreme leader at that time. They shut down the entire city for 3 days. It has been suggested that some of the crew members of the Space Shuttle Challenger might have survived the initial explosion. However, the cabin continued falling for several minutes until it struck the ocean, resulting in the loss of all the astronauts in one of the most tragic accidents in the history of space exploration. When the actress Michelle Rodriguez first appeared in the movie The Fast and the Furious, she did not have a driver's license. During filming, she had to learn how to drive for some scenes, and later obtained her license after the movie had already become very popular. At Oberlin University in Ohio, United States, there is a special program that rents works of art by famous artists such as Picasso, Lichtenstein, and Dali, so that more people can admire them. They rent them for only $5 per semester, so students can place them in their dorm rooms. Stephanie Hodge was part of Jackass, but one day she broke her back and pelvis performing a typical stunt from the show. The accident almost left her paralyzed. Every year, Crayola produces more than 2 billion crayons, enough to make a giant crayon 98 feet tall. The brand manufactures hundreds of different colors and millions of boxes that are distributed in schools and homes around the world. Russell Brand was entitled to $20 million of Katy Perry's fortune when they divorced, but he refused to take the money. According to reports from the time, he decided not to claim the portion of the assets accumulated during the marriage that corresponded to him. There are more scouts in Indonesia than in the rest of the world combined. In the last count, there were more than 21 million members participating. This is because it is a mandatory requirement for students. In the Exxon oil spill of 1989, 250,000 birds died, the same number that die daily from crashing into window glass. This type of collision occurs because birds do not perceive glass as a solid obstacle. Edmund McIlhenny, the inventor of Tabasco sauce, did not consider his invention to be very important in his life. He did not mention it in his autobiography, and it was not mentioned on his epitaph either. It seems he was not like the inventor of Pringles, who had his ashes buried in a can of the famous chips. Sacha Baron Cohen was monitored by the FBI during the filming of the movie Borat because they received many reports of a Middle Eastern man traveling in an ice cream truck. Some of his recordings in public places raised suspicions among citizens who did not know it was part of a film production. A study recently conducted by Italian economists discovered that the families with the most money in the city of Florence in 1427 are still, even today, the ones with the greatest wealth 6 centuries later. Similar evidence has been found in cities in Great Britain and China. The Onyx River is the only river in Antarctica. It flows only 60 days a year, which is when the weather is warmer there. During the Antarctic summer, the ice from nearby glaciers melts enough to feed it, and its waters flow toward Lake Vanda. By tomorrow, you will have forgotten more than 80% of the things you learned today, so this information is practically useless, but thank you for reading it anyway. Kit Kat is a product of Hershey's in the United States, but it belongs to Nestle in the rest of the world. This is due to a historic licensing agreement signed decades ago that divides the production and distribution of the popular chocolate bar by region. Botanists have not found a real difference between cauliflower and broccoli. In reality, both come from the same plant species, Brassica oleracea, and the differences we see are the result of centuries of agricultural selection that modified different parts of the plant. In 1899, Dr. Charles-Édouard Brown-Séquard claimed that the secret of eternal life was in injections made from extracts of animal testicles, which he injected into himself. His statements caused great controversy in the scientific community, and his method was soon discredited. Facebook co-founder Eduardo Saverin renounced his United States citizenship to avoid paying $700 million in taxes. Now, he is only Brazilian. He made the decision shortly before Facebook went public, which generated debate in the United States about tax laws for billionaires. Some contortionists can deliberately dislocate their hips or shoulders during their performances. Many of them have great natural flexibility or joint hyperlaxity, which allows them to perform extreme movements without suffering permanent injuries if done with proper training. In Australia, 15 million years ago, there existed a carnivorous flightless bird 8.2 feet tall and weighing 1,102 pounds, which was nicknamed the demon duck because it is believed to be an ancestor of ducks and geese. Dogs can smell where electrical current has passed and where human fingerprints up to 1 week old are located. Their extraordinary sense of smell allows them to detect chemical traces invisible to us, which is why they are used in forensic investigations and in the search for people. Indonesia has the unfortunate record of being the country with the most deforestation in the world. Brazil is in second place. Much of the forest loss in Indonesia is due to the expansion of palm oil plantations and logging in tropical regions. The classic pinball game was removed from Windows because there was a bug that made it incompatible with the 64-bit version of Windows XP. The code for this game was written by an external company, so instead of trying to decipher the program, they decided to remove it. Bees control the thickness and clarity of the honey they produce by beating their wings in the ventilation channels of the hive at different speeds to control the evaporation of water. Gaston Glock, the designer of Glock pistols, built prototypes and tested them with his left hand, so that if the prototype failed and destroyed his hand, he could still draw designs with his right hand. On average, a 65-year-old person will have seen more than 2 million advertisements for products. This includes advertising on television, the internet, streets, packaging, and printed media, showing how present marketing is in everyday life. In reality, Tyrannosaurus rex could not roar like the famous dinosaur in Jurassic Park. It could only produce sounds similar to a crocodile. Paleontologists believe it probably produced deep and rumbling vocalizations, more like growls or low resonances than the roars of modern big cats. In 2011, a 61-year-old woman gave birth to her own grandson using an egg from her 35-year-old daughter. She acted as a surrogate mother to help her daughter, who could not carry a pregnancy. Alien hand syndrome is a condition that causes a person's hand to move without being consciously commanded by the brain. It usually appears after brain injuries or surgeries that affect communication between the brain's hemispheres, causing involuntary movements that are difficult to control. Venus is the planet with the most volcanoes in the entire solar system. It has more than 1,600. Many of them are enormous volcanic structures formed by intense eruptions that occurred over millions of years on the planet's surface. A man named Harold Hackett has placed 4,800 messages in bottles and thrown them into the ocean. He has received more than 3,000 replies. For decades, he turned this activity into a kind of social experiment, receiving letters and postcards from people who found his bottles in different parts of the world. On average, more accidents caused by pants occur each year than accidents caused by chainsaws. Many of these incidents happen when people trip while putting on or taking off clothing, especially in small spaces or when trying to do it quickly. The Spanish painter and printmaker Francisco de Goya became completely deaf due to poisoning from the amount of lead contained in the paint he used. His illness appeared when he was in his 40s and deeply influenced the dark tone of many of his later works. There is a soccer stadium in Brazil where the center line of the field lies exactly on the equator, making each team defend in a different hemisphere of the world. Volume levels in recorded music have gradually increased since the 1990s. This is known as the loudness war, where recordings are compressed to sound louder, which reduces the original dynamic range but makes songs seem more impactful when heard. The flowers of the coffee plant smell like jasmine. They are small, white, and very fragrant, although their blooming lasts only a short time before the fruits that will eventually become coffee beans begin to form. Angelina Jolie sold the first photographs of her biological children for $23.7 million. She donated all the money to charity. The images were published in international magazines and became some of the most expensive celebrity photographs ever sold. Queen ants can live up to 30 years, while worker ants live between 1 and 3. The queen's main role is to reproduce and lay eggs throughout her life, while the workers perform tasks such as searching for food, caring for larvae, and defending the colony. There are 1 million bacteria in 0.034 fluid ounces of fresh water. These bacteria are an essential part of aquatic ecosystems because they help break down organic matter and recycle nutrients that support the life of algae, microscopic plants, and other organisms in the water. The dwarf willow is the smallest tree in the world. It is adapted to survive in Arctic and subarctic environments. In many cases, it grows close to the ground and barely reaches a few inches in height, which allows it to resist strong winds and extremely low temperatures. The rules of Monopoly clearly say that when a player lands on a property space and no one buys it, it must be auctioned to the highest bidder immediately. You have been playing Monopoly wrong your whole life. This official rule speeds up the game and prevents properties from remaining unowned for too long. Malo kingi is a species of jellyfish that was named after Robert King, a tourist who died in Australia after being attacked by one of them. It belongs to the group of box jellyfish, known for their powerful venom and for causing an extremely painful condition called Irukandji syndrome. If you burn potassium, the flame is purple. This phenomenon occurs because potassium's electrons release energy in the form of violet light when they are excited by heat, which is why this element is often used in chemistry demonstrations and metal identification tests. It took the developers of the game Arkham Asylum 2 years to create the animations for Batman's cape. The cape was designed with a complex digital physics system, so it would move realistically depending on wind, jumps, and the character's movements. Small pseudoscorpions live inside old books and protect them because they feed on book lice and termites. These tiny arachnids are harmless to people and are often found in libraries, archives, and cracks where dust and small insects accumulate. The temperature on Venus can reach up to 878 degrees Fahrenheit. This occurs because of an extreme greenhouse effect caused by its dense atmosphere rich in carbon dioxide, which makes the planet one of the hottest places in the solar system. If everyone in the world washed their hands properly, 1 million lives could be saved every year. This simple practice reduces the spread of bacteria, viruses, and parasites that cause intestinal and respiratory diseases, especially in young children and in places with limited access to healthcare services. In 2012, a professor in Florida was almost fired for putting a dog cone on his students, calling it the cone of shame. He took the idea from the movie Up. Isaac Newton developed a fear of sunlight because he spent a long time looking at the sun. During some experiments with light and vision, he even observed the sun directly using mirrors and other instruments, which caused visual discomfort for a time. Cats have 32 muscles in each ear. Thanks to them, they can move their ears in different directions independently, allowing them to locate the source of a sound with great precision, even from a certain distance. Mila Kunis has different colored eyes. The left one is brown and the right one is green. This condition is called heterochromia. In her case, it developed after she suffered chronic inflammation in one eye during her youth, which altered the pigmentation of the iris. Studies that used rabbits have won a total of 26 Nobel Prizes in medicine or physiology. Throughout the 20th century, these animals were used in experiments that contributed to discoveries about immunology, fertility, and diseases. In 2010, a man in Alberta, Canada, saved a baby he found in a trash container. Later, he found out that he was the father. The story attracted a lot of attention in the media because the rescue happened before he knew any connection with the child. When you look at the ocean from the beach, you can only see about 3 miles to the horizon because the curvature of the Earth prevents you from seeing farther. The exact distance depends on the height from which you observe. So, from a tall building or a cliff, the horizon can be seen much farther away. Jim Carrey was going to be Dr. Evil in the Austin Powers movies, but he had to reject the project because he could not find time in his schedule. At that moment, he was committed to filming other major productions, so the role ended up being played by Mike Myers. The woman who invented chocolate chip cookies sold her idea to Nestle in exchange for a lifetime supply of Nestle chocolate. The inventor was Ruth Wakefield, who created the recipe at her inn in Massachusetts during the 1930s. Typewriters were once known as literary pianos. The nickname appeared in the 19th century because the keys were pressed in a way similar to those of a piano, and the rhythmic sound of typing resembled a small musical performance. In the last 40 years, at least 20% of the Amazon rainforest has been cut down. Much of the deforestation is due to agricultural expansion, cattle ranching, mining, and road construction, which also affects biodiversity and the climate balance of the region. People who have Botox injections in their faces have difficulty identifying the facial expressions of other people in photos. It is believed that this happens because Botox prevents them from mimicking expressions, which means the brain does not have the ability to interpret emotions. Birds cannot be taken into space because they need gravity to consume their food. They do not have special muscles to move food to their stomachs the way we do. They would have to be fed with the help of some device. The Irish singer Enya has sold more than 100 million records during her career, but she has never gone on a concert tour. She prefers working in the studio and living a very private life, focusing on composing and producing her music with her small creative team. There are still secret passages inside the Pyramid of Giza in Egypt that have not been explored. Modern scans using muon technology have detected internal cavities that could be chambers or corridors that are still unknown. You have approximately 70,000 thoughts a day. Although it is an approximate and debated figure, Researchers agree that the human mind constantly generates thousands of ideas, memories, and associations while we are awake. In the scene of the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where Miles and his father are looking at their phones, scrolling through their contact lists, the names that can be seen are the writers and artists who have worked on Spider-Man over the years. The Santa Maria, the ship on which Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas, measured only 62 feet long, just a little longer than a large bus. Despite its relatively small size, it made the transatlantic voyage in 1492, together with the ships La Niña and La Pinta. Among mammals, females of all species live longer on average than males. Scientists believe this may be related to hormonal and genetic factors, as well as behavioral differences that influence health and longevity. In 1973, the crew of the Skylab 4 mission became the first humans to go on strike in space. For about one day, they stopped following the work schedule to rest, observe the Earth, and reorganize their activity rhythm. In DNA studies performed on the mummy of Tutankhamun, scientists found genetic material from the parasites transmitted by mosquitoes that cause malaria. It is the oldest evidence of the existence of this disease. In 2003, archaeologists found human footprints from 20,000 years ago and determined that the person was running at 23 miles per hour on mud. Usain Bolt's record is 27 miles per hour. Approximately 24 rabbits that were released in Australia multiplied until they reached 10 billion within a period of 67 years because they had no natural predators there. They are considered an invasive species. Most bees buzz in the musical note A, but when they are tired, they buzz in E. The sound comes from the rapid movement of their wings, which can beat hundreds of times per second, and whose frequency changes depending on the effort they are making. When the sun consumes all the hydrogen fuel in its core and enters its red giant phase, it will become so large that it will most likely absorb the planet Earth, as well as Mercury and Venus. However, conditions on Saturn's moon Titan could become favorable for the development of life in a way similar to what happened on Earth, and these conditions could last around 100 million years. But for the sun to become a red giant and swallow the Earth, there are still about 5 billion years left. So do not worry too much about it. Thomas Edison proposed marriage to his second wife using Morse code. According to stories from the time, he did it by tapping the dots and dashes on her hand, a curious method that reflected his fascination with telegraphy. There is a toxic fungal plague spreading around the world that is causing the mass extinction of amphibians. The fungus affects the skin of frogs and salamanders, interfering with vital functions and causing one of the most severe biodiversity crises ever recorded among these animals. In 1940, a vehicle shaped like a giant automobile was built to help with expeditions in Antarctica, but it turned out to be a failure because it did not work on snow. It was abandoned, and no one knows where it ended up. Gravity travels at a speed equivalent to the speed of light, the maximum speed of the universe. Therefore, just like the light that comes from very distant stars, we also experience the gravitational force those stars had thousands of years ago, even if they no longer exist today. Einstein gave the $32,000 he won from his Nobel Prize to his first wife, Mileva, as part of their divorce agreement. Before receiving the prize, he had already promised that the money would go to her and to the care of their children. 24% of all readers skip to the end of a book to find out the ending before finishing it. Do not cheat. Various surveys on reading habits have found that many people are curious about the ending and prefer to know it before they reach it. General Motors deliberately left the gas tank in a dangerous location at the back of the Chevy Malibu in 1979 because they calculated that the cost of personal injury lawsuits from accidents would be lower than the cost of moving the tank and making the car safer. There is a nanny school for wealthy families in Great Britain. Students must study for 4 years to graduate, and among their skills are martial arts for self-defense and acrobatic driving in case of any emergency. The filament of the first commercial electric light bulb, patented by Thomas Alva Edison in 1880, was made of bamboo. Edison and his team tested hundreds of materials before finding one that lasted long enough, and carbonized bamboo turned out to be strong and capable of maintaining incandescence for many hours. The Titanic had 4 smokestacks to release smoke and steam, although only 3 of them actually worked. The other one was mainly decorative because the number 4 was considered lucky. It also helped make the ship look more powerful and visually balanced than other ocean liners of the time. Every time a woodpecker's beak strikes a tree trunk, its head is subjected to more than 1,000 times the force of gravity. Its skull and tongue are adapted to absorb the impact, preventing brain damage despite the repeated blows. The inhabitants of the small town of Merotikal in India began playing chess as an alternative to drinking when alcohol was banned in that locality. Now, the town is popularly known as the chess town, and almost 100% of its population knows how to play it. Before 1890 pencils came in many different colors, until a company in Austria produced a new, high-quality drawing pencil with different hardness levels painted yellow. After that, pencils began to be manufactured that way in many factories because the yellow color became a symbol of quality. Singapore is the only modern nation that gained its independence even though it did not want it. In 1965, it was expelled from the Federation of Malaysia due to political and ethnic tensions, so it unexpectedly became an independent country and had to quickly build its own institutions. The Eiffel Tower has the same nickname as Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. In the case of the tower, the nickname comes from its metal structure, while the British politician received it because of her firm leadership style. A giraffe's heart can reach up to 23.6 inches in length and weigh up to 24.2 pounds. This size and strength are necessary to pump blood to the brain through its long neck, maintaining the proper pressure so the animal does not lose consciousness. Many checks signed by Marlon Brando were never cashed because his signature was usually worth more than the amount written on the check. Some fans preferred to keep them as collectibles, since an autograph from the actor could reach considerable value. The government of France considers books to be an essential necessity, along with basic food items and services such as electricity and water. For this reason, they have reduced taxes and special policies to protect bookstores and encourage reading throughout the country. Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, married the first girlfriend of the writer Oscar Wilde. The woman was named Florence Balcombe and had previously been in a relationship with Wilde before marrying Stoker in the 19th century. Two-thirds of the world's population has never seen snow. Much of humanity lives in tropical or subtropical regions where temperatures never drop enough for snow to fall, so many people only know it from images or movies. The country that consumes the most donuts in the world is Canada. It is also the country with the most donut shops per capita in the world, largely because of the enormous popularity of chains such as Tim Hortons. A cat's tail contains nearly 10% of all the bones in its body. It is made up of a series of small and flexible vertebrae that help the animal maintain balance, especially when walking on narrow surfaces or jumping between different heights. Since the year 1700, new species of beetles have been discovered at a rate of 1 every 6 hours. There are many species of beetles. The headache you get when you eat ice cream too quickly happens because your brain thinks it is in a cold environment and orders the blood vessels in your head to swell to warm you up. This phenomenon is known as a cold stimulus headache and usually disappears in a few seconds. When scientists discovered that the deep-sea dragonfish has chlorophyll in its eyes, the Pentagon began an investigation to create eye drops that would allow people to see in the dark. The interest arose because some marine organisms possess unique visual adaptations to survive in extremely dark environments. Someone left 3 Boeing 747 airplanes at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia. Since the owners did not appear, Malaysian authorities placed a notice in the newspaper saying that if no one claimed the planes after 14 days, they would reserve the right to sell them or dispose of the aircraft. The former president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was a big fan of James Bond movies. He watched a preliminary version of From Russia with Love in the White House on November 21, 1963, which turned out to be the last movie he saw because he was assassinated 1 day later. The Chow Chow is the only breed of dog that has a dark blue-purple tongue. This distinctive trait appears from an early age and is due to strong pigmentation in the tissues of the tongue, something very uncommon among domestic dogs. Black coffee has less caffeine than coffee that is not as dark. This happens because darker roasted coffee beans lose a small amount of caffeine during the roasting process, although the final difference is usually relatively small. There is a festival in Bolivia called Tinku that includes a ritual where people fight to settle their problems, and it lasts 2 to 3 days. The tradition comes from ancient Andean practices and also has a ceremonial meaning, since the spilled blood is considered a symbolic offering to Pachamama, Mother Earth. At the opening ceremony of the Berlin Olympic Games in 1936, 25,000 doves were released. Later, when a cannon was fired during the same ceremony, the doves began relieving themselves on all the spectators. In 2011, a serious incident occurred inside a Walmart store where an employee worked. While authorities carried out the investigation in a small, cordoned-off area of the store, the rest of the location remained open and many customers continued shopping as usual. Until 1857, it was legal to sell your wife if you lived in England. Although it was not a formal law, the practice occurred in some places as a symbolic form of marital separation when legal divorce was extremely difficult and expensive. Sea otters with pink noses are females. When they mate in the water, the males bite the females on the nose to keep them from moving, causing the damaged tissue to turn that characteristic color. Walkie-talkie in French is said as talkie-walkie. The term was adopted from English during the 20th century and is commonly used to refer to portable two-way communication radios. The first candles were made from cow fat. This substance, called tallow, was easy to obtain and was used for centuries before materials such as beeswax and later paraffin derived from petroleum became popular. The deepest gold mine in the world, located in South Africa, can reach as deep as 2.5 miles below the surface. Illegal miners can remain in the deepest parts for months. The lack of sunlight, dust, and minerals can cause their skin to take on a grayish color. That is why they are known as ghost miners. The design of the headphone jack has remained practically the same since 1878. Its basic connector and metal contact format has survived more than a century, with minimal changes. And even today, many modern devices still use very similar versions of the classic 3.5mm connector. In general, people walk 10% faster than they did 10 years ago. Research on urban behavior suggests that the pace of life in modern cities has accelerated over time. 11 of the 12 men who have walked on the moon were once Boy Scouts. Many of them participated in exploration and leadership activities during their youth, something that some people believe helped develop useful skills for their future careers. When a crocodile loses a tooth, another one grows back very quickly. They can produce up to 8,000 teeth throughout their lifetime. The first chewing gum went on the market in 1871, after Thomas Adams failed in his attempt to make automobile tires with the same ingredients. Just as fingers have unique fingerprints, the tongue also has shapes that are different in each person. Research has suggested that the shape, texture, and distribution of papillae can vary enough to be used in experimental biometric identification systems. In the 70s, the surgeon Robert White transplanted the head of a monkey onto the body of another monkey. After the procedure, the monkey could still hear, smell, taste, eat, and follow objects with its eyes, but it only survived 9 days. Of all the 46,000 species of spiders that have been discovered so far, only one is herbivorous. It is Bagheera kiplingi, a species that lives in Central America and feeds mainly on parts of plants. Sir Ian McKellen burst into tears while filming The Hobbit because he had to perform a scene alone with only a green screen behind him, without other actors. Later, he explained that he missed the direct interaction with his fellow performers during filming. There is a battery-powered bell at the University of Oxford that has been ringing continuously for 175 years. No one knows what the batteries are made of, and no one wants to take it apart to find out. On every continent, there is at least one city named Rome. The name has been repeated in many parts of the world due to the historical influence of the Roman Empire and the habit of European settlers naming new settlements after classical references. Lake Gafsa in Tunisia is a lake that appeared out of nowhere from one day to the next and became a tourist attraction. However, shortly after appearing, the turquoise water turned green because it stopped flowing. Red Bull was banned for several years in countries such as Norway and Denmark because of concerns about ingredients like taurine and the high caffeine content. However, those restrictions were later lifted, and today, the drink is sold legally in almost all European countries, although in some places there are age limits or warnings for its consumption. Male chickens have no use in the egg industry because they cannot lay eggs and are usually not raised for meat. For that reason, in many farms, they are discarded shortly after hatching, a practice that has generated ethical debates and has encouraged the search for more humane methods in the poultry industry. Elephants can also be left-handed. Just like humans, many elephants show a preference for using one side of their body, especially their trunk, to perform tasks such as grabbing food, manipulating objects, or exploring their surroundings. More than 1,800 ancient scrolls were preserved after being carbonized in Pompeii due to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79. Some are still being deciphered to this day. A whole beach was once stolen in Jamaica. The stolen sand was the equivalent of 500 truckloads. To this day, there is still no trace of where it went. If the entire population of China formed a line and walked past you, the line would never end because of the high reproduction rate. After a while, many crawling babies would start passing by. The Blu-ray of Season 6 of the series Dexter contained a preview that could not be skipped and showed the ending of the season, ruining everything for those who bought it. Many fans complained because the menu displayed key scenes before watching the episodes. In 1983, in the region of Redondo Beach, California, they decided to adopt a new official bird to represent the area. In the end, the Goodyear blimp was chosen as the official bird, even though it is clearly not a bird. In Hawaii, billboards and street advertising are illegal. These restrictions have existed for decades to preserve the natural landscape of the islands and prevent visual pollution on roads and in cities. Some snakes, Komodo dragons, and some types of sharks and turkeys can have virgin births. In other words, they can reproduce asexually. This process is called parthenogenesis and allows a female to produce offspring without the need for a male. We have lost 1/3 of all the planet's arable land in the last 40 years. Much of this loss is due to soil erosion, pollution, urbanization, and intensive agricultural practices that degrade the natural fertility of the land. There is a species of snail that is difficult to find and lives in Queensland, Australia, which, when it was discovered, was named Crikey Steve Irwini in honor of the wildlife expert Steve Irwin, also known as the crocodile hunter. The state of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil has only 5% of the country's population, but 70% of all Brazilian models come from there. The region has strong European influence, especially German and Italian, which is often mentioned as a possible explanation for this curious trend. Nikola Tesla could speak 8 languages: Serbian, Czech, English, French, German, Hungarian, Italian, and Latin. His talent for languages also reflected his academic training in Central Europe and his ability to work with scientists from different countries. The place with the smallest difference between the salaries earned by men and women is New Zealand, where the gap is less than 5%. For years, the country has implemented policies of salary transparency, labor equality laws, and programs to promote female participation in leadership positions. The government of Mexico has defended more than 400 Mexicans imprisoned in the United States and has prevented them from receiving the death penalty. These actions are usually based on international agreements that guarantee the right of detainees to receive consular assistance. Studies have confirmed that it can be better to promote people randomly to management positions instead of using the traditional method based on merit or experience. This idea comes from the so-called Peter Principle, which suggests that people tend to be promoted until they reach a level at which they are no longer competent. Humans, orcas, and some other whales are the only species in which the female survives menopause. Scientists believe this could be related to the so-called grandmother effect, where older females help care for and increase the survival chances of their descendants. The actor Bill Hader worked in a movie theater while he was studying, but he was fired after he told the ending of Titanic to some customers who had been rude to him. Blood is 92% water. Plasma, which makes up most of the blood, is composed mainly of water and serves as the medium for transporting nutrients, hormones, gases, and waste products throughout the body. In 2014, the Cassini probe received the discharge of 200 volts directly from Saturn's moon, Hyperion. This spacecraft made important discoveries about this satellite, such as its porous, sponge-like structure and the presence of water in the form of ice. 2/3 of all the caviar in the world is eaten aboard the ocean liner Queen Elizabeth II. For decades, the ship was famous for serving large quantities of this luxury delicacy to its passengers, becoming one of the largest consumers of caviar in the world. The gold medals from the London 2012 Olympics were the largest ever made, but they contained only 1.34% pure gold. The production of a documentary gave $100,000 to a homeless man to see what he would do. After 6 months, he had already spent almost all the money, went bankrupt again, and returned to living on the street. A koi fish named Hanako lived 225 years. According to records from its owner in Japan, it was born in the 18th century and died in 1977. Its age was estimated by analyzing the rings on its scales, similar to those of a tree. In Switzerland, there are more people considered millionaires than people who fall into the category of those who can receive government social assistance. Jennifer Love Hewitt recorded an album when she was only 12 years old that was initially released only in Japan, where she became an acclaimed pop star because of the sales success. Neutron stars have such strong gravity that the tallest mountain that could form on one of them would be less than 0.2 inches high, which means their surface is almost completely smooth. It is easy to tell a lizard from a crocodile. The lizard has a U-shaped jaw, while the crocodile has a V-shaped one. In addition, when they close their mouths, the lower teeth of alligators are usually hidden, while in crocodiles, some teeth remain visible from the outside. During World War II, the British had detailed plans to build an aircraft carrier made mainly of wood pulp and ice, but in the end, they were not able to do it. Some species of scorpions can survive by eating only once a year. This is because they have a very slow metabolism and can store energy for long periods, allowing them to endure long stretches without food in extreme environments. The Academy Award-winning actor Leonardo DiCaprio has said that he has never used substances. To portray some of his roles in movies, he even had to receive guidance on how to convincingly represent characters under their effects. China is the largest exporter of swimsuits. Approximately 70% of all swimsuits in the world come from that country. Some Victorian instruction manuals advised women to put pins in their mouths to avoid being kissed in the dark when trains passed through tunnels. The cat that holds the Guinness record for being the loudest is named Merlin and can purr at 67 decibels, as loud as the sound of a vacuum cleaner. Its unusual purr was officially measured in the United Kingdom and even surprised veterinarians because of the intensity of the sound. A man named Dick Hoyt ran 247 triathlons, including events such as Ironman, in addition to 70 marathons, all while pushing his son in a wheelchair who had a disability. The reason grass sometimes makes you itch is because it is actually cutting your skin with its edges, but the cuts are so small that they are not visible to the human eye. An elephant's trunk can contain up to 40,000 muscles. This enormous number of muscles allows it to perform very precise movements, from pulling down trees to picking up small objects from the ground. According to statistics, around 37% of the games that are purchased on Steam are never played. This usually happens because many users buy bundles or games during massive discount events and then never find the time to try them. A man named William Bergstrom became famous after one day arriving in Las Vegas with two briefcases. One was empty, and the other contained $777,000 in cash. He bet everything he had in a dice game, double or nothing, and won. They helped him store the money in the empty briefcase, and he left. Anzac biscuits are traditional cookies from Australia and New Zealand that, in order to be sold according to the law in those countries, must be prepared following detailed instructions in the recipe. In 2008, the chain Subway was forbidden from putting them on its menu. The materials used to manufacture a desktop computer, which include fossil fuels, chemicals, and water, would weigh more than 4,400 pounds in total, roughly the same weight as a rhinoceros. In 2009, a phone from the brand Peak was released that had only the function of running Twitter. It cost $99, and according to reviews, it was not even good for tweeting. Shortly afterward, it was withdrawn from the market. The tall white hats worn by chefs traditionally had 100 folds to represent the number of different ways an egg could be cooked. Burger King released a left-handed Whopper in 1998, in which all the condiments were rotated 180 degrees. It attracted thousands of customers. 1 gram of your DNA contains the same amount of information as the entire databases of Facebook and Google combined. DNA is an extremely efficient molecule for storing data, and scientists are studying how to use it in the future as a possible digital storage medium. Former United States President Bill Clinton was attacked by a sheep when he was 8 years old. He himself told the anecdote in interviews, recalling that the animal rammed him repeatedly while he was on a farm during his childhood in Arkansas. Stalin ordered shamans to be thrown from helicopters to prove that they could really fly, and it seems that none of them could. The philosopher and mathematician René Descartes had a theory that monkeys and chimpanzees were capable of speaking, but preferred to stay silent so they would not be ordered to do things. This idea was part of his reflections on the difference between the human mind and animal behavior. Ancient Scandinavians claimed that the aurora borealis was the result of large schools of herring reflecting light into the sky. In different traditions, it was also believed that they were spirits, celestial battles, or supernatural signs visible in the northern night skies. A second is called a second because it is the second division of an hour into segments of 60. The first is a minute, the second is the second. This base 60 system comes from the ancient Babylonians, whose way of measuring time still influences modern clocks. In 1910, there were 34% more people in Manhattan than in 2000. At the beginning of the 20th century, the district was much more densely populated due to more compact housing and the massive arrival of immigrants. The Albanian language has 27 words to describe different types of mustaches. This richness of terms reflects how some physical characteristics can receive many linguistic variations within a culture and its everyday vocabulary. Climbing a mountain too quickly can cause general illness and even death. At heights greater than 8,200 feet, the change in pressure prevents the body from receiving the oxygen it needs. That is why mountaineers usually ascend gradually to allow the body to adapt to the lower availability of oxygen. The modern polo shirt was invented so tennis players could raise the collar to protect it from sunburn. The design became popular in the 20th century thanks to the French tennis player René Lacoste, who wanted a garment more comfortable than traditional shirts. Snakes do not have taste buds. Instead of relying on taste, they mainly use their forked tongues to collect chemical particles from the air and the ground, which they then analyze with the Jacobson's organ, a specialized system that allows them to detect prey, predators, and potential mates. Towels are an important part of the culture of Belarus. They even appear on the country's flag. In traditional weddings, the bride often drags a ceremonial embroidered towel called a ruchnik, which symbolizes prosperity and union. 1 dog year is not equivalent to 7 human years. The longevity of dogs varies depending on their size and breed, and large dogs tend to age faster than small ones, so the real calculation changes greatly depending on the animal. When he was 19 years old, Johann Sebastian Bach walked more than 370 miles to see a performance by the composer Dietrich Buxtehude. The young musician made the journey from Arnstadt to Lübeck to learn from his work and study his musical style. Women use a different type of tennis ball than men. The balls used in women's tournaments usually have slightly less internal pressure, which makes them bounce somewhat differently during play. Cheese is the most stolen food in the world. Studies in the food industry have indicated that a large portion of supermarket theft involves this product because of its high value, easy-to-hide size, and strong demand in many countries. Paper can only be recycled 6 times. After that, the fibers can no longer hold together. Each time it is recycled, the fibers become shorter and weaker, so eventually they can no longer form a strong sheet. In the movie The Oracle, Danny DeVito provided the voice of the Oracle in 6 different languages: English, Italian, German, Russian, and Spanish. Last year, a group of inmates from a maximum security prison in New York defeated the specialized debate team from Harvard University in a debate competition. Crime, disease, and the speed at which people walk increase by 15% when a city doubles in size. Studies on urban dynamics have observed that many aspects of life in cities change proportionally as population increases. Mexico City is currently the city with the most traffic in the world. Various studies on urban mobility have pointed out that drivers can spend hundreds of hours per year stuck in congestion due to the large number of vehicles and the size of the city. Scientists created a quantum gas that reached temperatures below absolute zero and began to show characteristics similar to dark energy. It is a form of dark matter. Do not worry, I did not understand anything either. When Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba, he ordered that all Monopoly games on the island be destroyed. The game was considered a symbol of capitalism, so it was banned along with other cultural products associated with the United States economic system. Misophonia is the medical term for the unpleasant sensation people feel when they hear something squeak or when someone scratches a chalkboard. People who suffer from it can experience intense irritation from everyday sounds, such as chewing, heavy breathing, or repeatedly tapping objects. Jeans have been banned in North Korea for many years because they are considered a symbol of United States imperialism. Authorities also control other aspects of fashion, such as hairstyles and clothing styles, to limit foreign cultural influence within the country. The actor Hugh Laurie developed hip problems and began to limp in real life after playing Dr. House for so long. For years, he maintained the posture and walking style of the character, which eventually caused real physical discomfort. It is believed that the Mona Lisa once had eyelashes and eyebrows, but that they gradually disappeared due to the cleaning the painting received. Some high-resolution digital analyses have found very faint traces of strokes that could have been part of those original details. Snails can sleep for 3 consecutive days. In fact, some species can remain in a resting state for much longer periods when environmental conditions are not favorable, such as during droughts or extreme temperatures. Squid travel faster when they jump through the air than when they are underwater. Some species expel jets of water to propel themselves out of the surface and glide through the air for several feet, a strategy that also helps them escape from marine predators. In Sudan, crucifixion is still officially considered a form of capital punishment. Within the country's legal system, there are provisions based on interpretations of Islamic law that contemplate extremely severe punishments for certain crimes. 1 out of every 10 convicts in Finland escaped from prison in 2013. This is partly because the Finnish prison system includes open facilities with minimal supervision, where some inmates can work or move relatively freely during the day. Every electron in the universe knows about the state of all the other electrons. This idea comes from quantum physics and the Pauli exclusion principle, which states that 2 electrons cannot occupy exactly the same quantum state within a system. If you add up all the time we spend blinking while we are awake, on average, we spend 1.2 years with our eyes closed throughout our lives. Chickens raised for food today are almost 4 times heavier on average than their counterparts in the 1950s. The highest paid athlete in all of history is not Michael Jordan or Cristiano Ronaldo. It was a chariot driver in ancient Rome named Gallus Apuleius Diocles, who earned the equivalent of $15 billion during his career. Keith Richards' musical career began in 1953 when he sang in a choir at the coronation of the Queen of England. As a child, he attended a school choir that participated in celebrations related to the coronation of Elizabeth II. Some birds in the Chernobyl area appear to be evolving to avoid the radioactive zone caused by the 1986 nuclear accident. Studies have observed changes in behavior and physiology, such as a greater presence of antioxidants, which could help them better resist the effects of radiation. In some regions of Ethiopia, traditional practices of forced marriage still exist. For many years, it has been reported that a large portion of marriages occurred without the full consent of the woman. Migratory birds are sensitive to the magnetic poles of the Earth and use them to guide themselves during their flights. It is believed that they possess special proteins in their eyes and magnetism-sensitive cells that allow them to perceive the Earth's magnetic field as a kind of natural map for navigation. Only 1 person has been killed by the police in Iceland since it became an independent country. The case occurred in 2013 during an operation in Reykjavik against an armed man who had fired at the police. The incident caused great national shock because the lethal use of force is extremely rare in that country. Switzerland banned all types of motor vehicle racing after the 1955 Le Mans accident, in which 83 spectators died. Until a few years ago, there were discussions about lifting that ban. The highest number of bee stings a man has suffered without dying is 2,443. The record was registered during a controlled exhibition and shows that, although many stings can be extremely dangerous, the outcome also depends on the body's reaction. There are nuclear plants so safe that a commercial airplane could crash into them without releasing harmful radiation. Many modern reactors are designed with thick containment structures of concrete and steel capable of resisting very strong impacts. There are 35,112 golf courses around the world. The largest concentration is in the United States, followed by countries such as Japan, Canada, and the United Kingdom, where golf has a long tradition and a large base of players. Wealthy and idle Romans used to prepare a highly complex dish that consisted of a cow stuffed with a pig, which was stuffed with a goose, which was stuffed with a duck, which was stuffed with a chicken, and everything was cooked together in its own juices. Toads do not drink water. They absorb it directly through their skin. They have a specialized area on the lower part of their body called the pelvic patch, which allows them to absorb moisture from the soil, mud, or water while sitting on damp surfaces. The most likely time for rain to occur is 7 in the morning, while the least likely time is 3 in the morning. This is due to atmospheric patterns related to changes in temperature and humidity that tend to favor cloud formation during the early morning hours. The human body grows much faster during the first weeks inside the uterus. If it continued growing at that rate forever, in 50 years it would be larger than Mount Everest. This example is used to illustrate how extraordinarily fast development occurs in the earliest stages of life. The population in Germany is shrinking. There are 2 million fewer people than in the previous decade. This phenomenon is mainly related to a low birth rate and an aging population, a demographic challenge that also affects several European countries. The record for the most people on a surfboard is 47. It was achieved with a specially made board for the occasion on a beach in Australia. The board measured several feet in length, and the group had to coordinate carefully to stay balanced while riding a wave. An average portion of pasta in a meal is 480% larger than recommended. Portions suggested by nutrition specialists are usually much smaller, but restaurants and commercial dishes serve much larger quantities, which contributes to excessive calorie consumption. Sharks are older than trees. The first sharks appeared 400 million years ago, while the first trees appeared 350 million years ago. The government of Denmark charges a tax of 180% of the price when you buy a car. In addition, getting a driver's license costs more than the equivalent of $1,000. In the last 4,000 years, humans have not domesticated a new animal. Most domestic animals today, such as dogs, horses, cows, and sheep, were domesticated thousands of years ago during the early development of agricultural societies.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.